Police officer discovers black girl sleeping on the street, night after night, and when he realizes her reality, he can't hold back his tears. The reason will move you deeply. The city lights of Detroit flickered like distant stars, reflecting the loneliness that filled the deserted streets. Officer Mark Davis drove his patrol car, his gaze fixed on the road, but his mind wandered through memories that seemed more vivid than the reality around him. It was a cold night, and the biting breeze seeped through the car windows, reminding him of little Emily, his daughter, who was no longer with him. It had been 5 years, and the loss still haunted him, leaving him to wonder if he would ever be able to move on from the past. Another sleepless night, he murmured to himself as the headlights of his car briefly illuminated the weary and worn faces of homeless people hiding in the shadows. He could see in each gaze the pain and despair that permeated the city. The echoes of distant sirens seemed to whisper memories of a time when his life was filled with laughter and love. What did I do to deserve this? He thought, feeling the weight of guilt in his chest. As he passed by a dark alley, something caught his attention. A small figure curled up on the ground, covered with a tattered blanket, stirred his paternal instincts. He hesitated, remembering Emily when she was little, with her curly hair and a smile that could light up any room. An impulse of compassion arose, but he slowly pulled away. I can't get involved, he told himself, tormented by the pain of his past. Mark, are you still there? Looking at ghosts? Asked Jake, his partner, who had followed him in another patrol car. Mark turned to him, trying to mask the confusion in his eyes. I'm fine, Jake. Just thinking, he replied, his voice choked with the emotion building in his heart. Jake watched his friend with concern, knowing that Mark's mind was in a dark place. You need to take a break, man. Life isn't just work, and you know you can't carry this forever, Jake insisted, trying to break the barrier that Mark had built around himself. Mark sighed, glancing back at the alley. I don't know, Jake. It's hard. Every day I just see more pain and suffering, and I can't do anything to change it. Maybe you can start by helping one person at a time. Have you thought about doing something for those kids on the street? Jake suggested, nodding toward the alley where the small figure still lay. Mark frowned, but Jake's gaze was firm. Sometimes a simple gesture can change everything. Mark shook his head, a mix of reluctance and hope. I know you're right, but what if I fail? What if she doesn't trust me? He questioned, his voice thick with emotion. Then you try again. That's how it's done. And don't forget, you're not alone in this. I'm here, Jake affirmed, giving Mark's shoulder a reassuring pat before returning to the patrol car. Mark watched as his partner drove away, the words echoing in his mind. That night, as he returned home, Mark tried to reconnect with Lisa, but when they sat down for dinner, the silence between them was palpable. Lisa, her eyes weary, finally broke the silence. Mark, we need to talk. You're pulling away from me. Since Emily's death, it feels like you're living in a separate world. Mark looked at her, the pain evident on his face. I don't know how to deal with this, Lisa. The truth is, I feel lost, and I don't want to hurt you more. But staying silent won't help. You need to talk about what you feel. I want to help you, but you have to let me into your world, she pleaded, her voice filled with emotion. Mark felt the weight of her words, but the pain was too deep, and he hesitated to open his heart again. I'll try, Lisa. The truth is, I just want all of this to end. I want the pain to go away, he replied, staring at his plate, the food forgotten. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with everything they weren't saying. The night dragged on, and the shadows of the past continued to haunt him. Mark walked through the dark streets of Detroit, the headlights of his police car the only thing illuminating the night. The city, with its worn facades and the shadow of lost lives, mirrored his own pain. As he passed by an alley, something caught his attention again. He slammed on the brakes, the sound of the tires screeching against the asphalt breaking the silence of the night. At the end of the alley, curled up under a tattered blanket, was a small figure. It was a girl. He could see her unkempt hair, her dirty cheeks, and how she huddled as if trying to protect herself from the world around her. Mark hesitated. The image of his daughter Emily surged in his mind, bringing a wave of memories that overwhelmed him. He closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push away the pain that this memory provoked. I can't, he murmured to himself, feeling the weight of the past in his chest. He wanted to help, but the fear of what might happen made him hesitate. With a heavy sigh, Mark decided to move on. He turned away, but each step felt harder than the last. The image of the girl lingered in his mind, a painful reminder of his own loneliness. When he arrived home, he found Lisa sitting at the table, her expression reflecting the same solitude he felt. Their conversation was brief and tense, marked by awkward silences. "You're distant again, Mark," she said, breaking the silence that surrounded them. "What's going on?" "Just thinking about things," he replied, avoiding her gaze. "Thinking about Emily?" Lisa's question hung in the air and Mark felt his stomach twist. He nodded, his heart heavy. "You need to talk about it. You can't keep going like this." "I know, but it's hard. I feel like I'm losing control," he admitted, his voice choked. Lisa sighed, frustrated. "You can't pull away from me, Mark. We need to support each other." "I know," he murmured. But the truth was that the pain he carried felt like an abyss, and the idea of opening up to Lisa seemed impossible. The connection between them was fraying, and he felt there was no way to fix it. The following night, still tormented by his thoughts, Mark decided to return to the alley. He felt he needed to do something, that he couldn't simply ignore the existence of that child. When he arrived, the scene was the same. Mia wrapped in her blanket, sleeping soundly. A surge of compassion overwhelmed him, and he approached her, trying to be quiet. His heart raced as he saw the fragility of the girl. Suddenly, a noise made him stop. Mia woke up startled, her large, petrified eyes meeting Mark's. He raised his hands in a gesture of calm. "Hey, take it easy. I'm just a police officer. I don't want to hurt you," he said, his voice soft. But her distrust was palpable. She backed away, pulling the blanket closer. "Who are you?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "My name is Mark. I'm here to help if you let me," he replied, struggling to maintain his composure. The girl looked at him with a mix of fear and curiosity. Mark sensed her vulnerability, and it made him feel powerless. "You don't need to be afraid of me." Mia didn't respond. She continued to watch him, and Mark knew that trust wouldn't be something easily earned. He sighed, remembering Jake, his colleague. "I need to tell someone about this," he thought. The next morning, he sought out Jake and, in a moment of desperation, decided to confide in him. "Jake, I saw a girl on the streets. She's alone and I can't stop thinking about her," Mark confessed, his voice low, almost as if he feared someone might overhear him. "You need to do something, Mark. You can't just let this go. You're a police officer. You have to help," Jake encouraged, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Think about what you would want someone to do for your daughter." Jake's words echoed in his mind, and he realized that in some way, helping that girl might be the only way to deal with his own pain. He didn't know how, but he knew he had to try. Before we continue with this emotional story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any stories. And let us know which city you're watching this video from in the comments. Mark walked along the worn sidewalk of the alley, the moonlight reflecting off the puddles formed after the previous night's rain. He held a bottle of water and some packaged snacks, a simple gesture that seemed to carry the weight of his determination. His heart raced with a mix of anxiety and hope. He knew that tonight was the night he would attempt to connect with Mia in a more meaningful way. The small, huddled figure was there again, wrapped in a tattered blanket that seemed more a patchwork of memories than a real shelter. Mark stopped a few steps away, hesitating for a moment. He took a deep breath, feeling the cold of the night seep into his bones, but what struck him most was the girl's loneliness. "Mia," he called gently, trying not to frighten her. "It's me, Mark." The girl stirred, her large, frightened eyes widening upon seeing the figure of the police officer. She quickly stood up, letting the blanket slip from her shoulders. Distrust was etched on her face. "What do you want?" Her voice was low, almost a whisper, but it carried a strength that Mark couldn't ignore. "I brought something for you," he said, moving slowly, as if trying not to scare her any further. "Water and some snacks. You must be hungry." Mia looked at the items he was holding, curiosity mingling with fear. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. No one has cared before. Mark felt a tightness in his chest. I know it can be hard to trust adults, but I want to help. I'm not here to hurt you," he replied, placing the bottle and snacks on the ground between them, as a gesture of peace. The girl eyed the items warily, but hunger began to overcome her distrust. "You promise you won't take me away?" She still kept a safe distance, her eyes fixed on Mark, evaluating every movement. "I promise," he said, gesturing with his hands to show that he wasn't armed. "I just want you to have something to eat and drink. You're not alone." Mia hesitated for a moment, but finally took a step forward. "Just a little," she murmured, grabbing the bottle of water with trembling hands. Mark watched as she opened the bottle and took a sip, her expression softening as she felt the coolness of the water. "Thank you," she said almost in a whisper. "You're welcome," Mark replied, relieved to see the initial barrier beginning to break. "If you need more, I'll be here every night." In the following days, Mark returned to the alley each night, always bringing something for Mia. He began to feel that little by little he was building a bridge between them. One night, while they were sharing a sandwich, Mia started to open up, revealing fragments of her painful life. I don't have a place to stay," she said, looking down, her unkempt hair hiding part of her face. "I understand," Mark replied, feeling empathy swell within him. "I lost my daughter a few years ago. Sometimes the world feels very dark, but it's important to find someone to share that pain with." Mia looked up, a glimmer of curiosity mixed with sadness in her eyes. "You had a daughter?" she asked, her voice still hesitant. "Yes, Emily," he said, his heart tightening at the mention of her name. "She was an amazing girl. I miss her every day." "I miss my mom," Mia confessed, her voice almost breaking. "She's not here anymore. I just wanted someone to care." "I care, Mia," Mark said firmly, his gaze intense. "And I want you to know that you don't have to face this alone. We can find a way to help you." Mia looked at him, distrust still lingering, but something in her expression began to change. It was as if, for the first time, she was starting to see a light in the darkness. "Maybe," she murmured, a small step, but an important one. The connection between them was slowly forming, but Mark knew that each conversation, each shared snack was a victory. He wasn't just helping Mia. He was, in some way, also helping himself begin to heal. The nights were still dark, but now there was a glimmer of hope emerging between them, a light that began to shine through the tears of the night. Mark Davis walked the streets of Detroit, his heart heavy with the memory of Emily. The streetlights cast long shadows, and the glow of his police car's headlights reflected the desolation surrounding the city. He had lost count of how many nights he had spent thinking about his daughter, but the pain of her absence still felt like an open wound. As he observed Mia, the girl he had found on the streets, something inside him began to shift. She was so small and vulnerable, and somehow her presence awakened memories of the happy moments he had shared with Emily. That night, while at home, Mark sat at the table, his food growing cold in front of him. Lisa, his wife, watched him with concern. "You're distant again, Mark," she said, breaking the silence that hung between them. "What's going on?" He sighed, staring at his plate. It's hard, Lisa. The city feels so lost, and I can't stop thinking about Emily. I feel like I'm failing as a father, as a husband." Lisa crossed her arms, frustration mingling with the pain they both shared. "You're not failing. You're fighting. But this burden isn't yours alone. You need to open up to me. We need to face this together." "I don't know how," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes I feel like all I'm doing is trying to fill a void that will never be filled. And do you think pulling away from me will help? We need to support each other, Mark. I can feel you distancing yourself, and it hurts." Mark looked into Lisa's eyes, noticing the tears forming. It was the first time in a long while that he saw her pain so clearly reflected. He wanted to connect, but fear kept him trapped. "I just don't know how to deal with this," he admitted finally. "We'll find a way together. You don't have to go through this alone." With those words echoing in his mind, Mark decided he needed to take action. There was a spark of hope when he thought of Mia, and he wanted to help her. That night he returned to the alley where the girl slept. As he approached, he felt his heart race. The torn blanket was still there, but the small figure was no longer curled up visibly. Mark hesitated again, battling the ghosts of his own pain. "Mia," he called softly, almost afraid to wake her. The girl opened her eyes, startled, and Mark realized her distrust was still present. "It's me, Mark. I brought something for you." She sat up slowly, watching him warily. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I just wanted to see if you'd like a snack." "I don't want to bother you," he said, extending his hand with a package of cookies and a bottle of water. Mia hesitated, studying him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I care about you. I saw you here, and I can't ignore someone who needs help." She took the food but still kept a safe distance. "People don't help for free. What do you want in return?" Mark felt a pang of sadness. "Nothing. I just want you to know you're not alone." Her eyes softened for a moment, and he saw a small crack in the wall she had built around herself. "Just don't hurt me," she whispered. "I would never do that," he replied sincerely. You can trust me. In the days that followed, as Mark tried to figure out how he could help Mia, he felt more alive than he had in years. The connection that was beginning to form between them reminded him of the joyful moments he had shared with Emily, but at the same time, guilt surrounded him. It was as if he were betraying his daughter's memory by finding a new purpose. Why can't I forget? He thought, anguished. Meanwhile, in a conversation with Jake, his co-worker, Mark opened up about his frustrations. I feel trapped, Jake. Trying to help this girl constantly reminds me of my daughter. It's like I'm trying to compensate for something I'll never get back. Jake nodded, understanding. You're not trying to replace her, Mark. You're just trying to do the right thing. And that's what she needs. Some hope. Mark sighed, pondering his friend's words. He knew he needed to take action. The idea of finding a shelter for Mia began to take shape in his mind. If I don't try, who will? I can't leave her here alone. With that determination, he decided that the next night, he would return to the alley. He was ready to take the next step, even knowing the journey would be difficult. Hope was starting to seep into his heart, and he was willing to fight for it. Mark entered the house with a heavy heart, the frustrations of the night still pounding in his mind. He headed to the kitchen, where Lisa was organizing the dishes after dinner. The smell of pasta still lingered in the air, but for Mark, the meal seemed to have lost its flavor. He leaned against the counter, watching her for a moment. Lisa noticed his presence and turned, her eyes reflecting concern. Hey, love, how was patrol? She asked, trying to coax a smile from him. As always, Mark replied, his voice tense. But today, I saw a girl in the alley again. A little girl. She must be about 11. Lisa frowned, setting aside the dishes. Are you talking about the same girl you mentioned before, the one you can't stop thinking about? Yeah, he said, running his hands over his face. I can't shake the image of her from my mind. She's so alone and vulnerable. I feel like I should do something, but I don't know where to start. She stepped closer, placing her hand on his arm, seeking comfort in his touch. What do you want to do? I thought about taking her to a shelter, but the staff there seems so cynical. They don't believe that a kid like her can be helped, and I don't want her to feel like I'm just shoving her from one place to another. I just don't know. Lisa sighed, her expression softening. Mark, you can't save the world alone, but if you really care about her, maybe the first thing to do is try to understand her situation. Build a relationship of trust. You know how to do that. He looked at her, his eyes lighting up with the idea. Do you think we can do this together? Of course we can, she replied with an encouraging smile. The pain that you both feel can be the starting point for something new. We'll help her, but we need to be patient. Mark felt a wave of hope wash over him. You're right. If we can get her to trust us, maybe we can change her life. That night, as the city remained shrouded in shadows, Mark and Lisa began to outline a plan. They spent hours researching shelters and programs for street kids. Lisa took notes while Mark started thinking about how he could approach Mia in a more effective way. We can bring some things for her the next time you find her, Lisa suggested. Simple things like food or clean clothes. That could be a good start. Mark nodded, feeling like he was heading in the right direction. Yeah, and maybe I can tell her a bit about myself, about Emily. Show her that I understand what it's like to lose someone. That could be powerful, Lisa affirmed. But remember, you don't have to force anything. Let her open up in her own time. That morning, Mark woke up with renewed determination. He quickly got dressed and headed out, his mind focused on Mia. As he arrived at the alley, his heart raced at the sight of her there, curled up under a blanket. He approached slowly, holding a bottle of water and some snacks he had bought. Mia, he called softly, trying not to startle her. She lifted her head, her large, wary eyes meeting his. What do you want? Her voice was low, almost a whisper. I brought you some things, Mark replied, extending his hand with the food. You don't have to be afraid. I'm here to help. Mia hesitated, but hunger and curiosity urged her to move a little closer. What do you want from me? She asked, watching him cautiously. I don't want anything. I just want you to know that you're not alone. You can trust me, Mark said, his gaze sincere. She took the bottle and snacks, but still kept a safe distance. No one has ever helped before. Why would you do this? He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her loneliness. Because I know what it's like to feel alone. I lost my daughter a few years ago, and I just want to do something good, to help. Mia looked at him, and for a brief moment a spark of understanding passed between them. You're not like the others, she murmured, still suspicious. "No, I'm not," Mark replied with a slight smile. "And I hope we can be friends." The silent connection between them began to form, a small step toward the trust they both desperately needed. As the night wore on, Mark knew this was just the beginning of their journey together. He was determined not to give up on Mia, and to give her the hope she so deserved. Mark sat down in the alley, the dim light of a street lamp casting long shadows on the ground. Mia was next to him now, a little more comfortable with his presence. The distrust still lingered in the air, but there was a new energy between them, a connection beginning to take shape. The boy looked up at the starry sky, the stars shining brightly, reflecting the hope he was trying to cultivate in his heart. "Have you ever seen stars like this before?" Mark asked, breaking the silence that surrounded them. He glanced at Mia, who was gazing at the lights in the sky, still wrapped in her tattered blanket. "No, I used to see the stars when I slept on the roof of my last shelter, but it wasn't like this. It was more dirty, kind of hazy," Mia replied, her voice soft and hesitant, as if revealing a secret. "Yeah, the city can be a tough place," Mark said, his eyes drifting into the memories of his own pain. "But even in the darkest nights, the stars still shine. Sometimes we just need a little light to guide us." Mia looked at him, her expression a mix of curiosity and skepticism. "And what do you do when you can't see the stars?" "I try to remember that they're there, even if I can't see them," Mark replied, his voice trembling slightly. He was beginning to open up to the girl, sharing a bit of his own struggle. "I lost my daughter a few years ago, and sometimes it's hard to see the light. But I've learned that I can find new ways to shine, even if the pain is still there." Mia's expression changed. For a moment she ceased to be the wary girl and became a child in search of understanding. "I lost my mom," she confessed, looking down, her hands trembling. She didn't come back for me. I didn't know where she was, and then I was all alone." Mark felt his heart ache. He remembered the nights when Emily didn't want to go to bed, her laughter echoing through the house, and how he was always there to comfort her. "I'm so sorry, Mia. I never want you to feel alone. I want to help." Mia raised her head, her large, vulnerable eyes fixed on Mark. "How are you going to do that? You don't know anything about me." "I want to know you," Mark replied earnestly. "I want to understand what you like, what you dream of being. And if you let me, I want you to be part of my life and my wife Lisa's life. We want you to have a safe place." She hesitated, the distrust still evident in her gaze. "And if I can't stay? What if you don't like me?" "That won't happen," Mark asserted, his voice firm. "We'll be here, no matter what happens. I promise that if you open up to us, we'll do everything we can to make sure you feel at home. You deserve that." Mia looked at the ground, thinking. The possibility of a new beginning seemed so distant, but the way Mark spoke, the sincerity in his voice, was beginning to break down her walls. "And what if I want to draw?" she asked timidly, a glimmer of hope starting to appear in her eyes. "Draw? You like to draw?" Mark asked, surprised and excited. "That's amazing, Mia. What do you like to draw?" "Things I see, and how I feel," she replied, a slight smile forming on her lips. "But it's just for me. I'm not good enough." "I doubt that's true. Everyone has a story to tell through art, and I would love to see what you create," Mark said, his heart warming. "Can you show me someday?" Mia's expression began to change, a small smile emerging. "Maybe one day," she replied hesitantly, but the seed of hope was being planted. "Great. So let's make a deal. You show me what you draw, and I promise I'll bring more paper and pencils next time. And who knows, maybe you can teach me to draw too," Mark suggested, winking at her. Mia laughed, the first laugh Mark had heard from her. "You drawing? That'll be funny." "Hey, don't underestimate my hidden talent," he joked. "I'll give it my best shot, and if it doesn't work out, at least we'll have fun together." As they looked at each other, the connection that was forming between them felt stronger than any pain they both carried. Mark felt that, although their wounds would never fully disappear, Mia's presence in his life could be a light, a new opportunity for healing and love. On a sunny Saturday morning, Mark and Lisa prepared to take Mia to a shelter for homeless children. The weather was mild, but the atmosphere was tense. Mia, still hesitant, watched from a distance as Mark and Lisa got ready. Their eyes met, and the girl felt a mix of hope and fear growing inside her. The shelter was a promise of safety, but also a reminder of her vulnerability. "Are you ready, Mia?" Mark asked, trying to convey confidence in his voice. He knelt to her level, his eyes searching hers. "We'll go together. I promise it won't be scary." Mia bit her lower lip, indecisive. What if they don't like me there? What if I can't fit in? Her voice was a whisper laden with insecurity and distrust. Lisa, noticing the girl's hesitation, approached and spoke softly. Mia, everyone here will understand you. These kids have been through tough times just like you. This could be the perfect place for you to find friends who know what you're going through. But what if it doesn't work out? Mia insisted, her eyes filled with tears. I don't want to be rejected again. Mark extended his hand, gently touching her shoulder. Let's give it a chance. We're here for you, and if it doesn't work, we can try something else. The important thing is that you know you're not alone. The girl looked at Mark's hand, a gesture that seemed small but carried immense weight. She took a deep breath, trying to muster courage. Okay, but only because you're with me. That's right, we'll go together, Lisa said, smiling. Now let's go. Upon arriving at the shelter, the simple, welcoming facade seemed promising. The walls were painted in vibrant colors, and laughter from children echoed from inside. Mark squeezed Mia's hand as she hesitated at the door, watching the kids play in the courtyard. See? Look how much fun they're having, Mark commented, trying to cheer her up. Maybe you can play too. Mia looked at their joyful faces and, for a moment, felt a pang of nostalgia for her own childhood. But fear still dominated her. What if they don't want to play with me? She shook her head, insecurity creeping back in. If you don't try, you'll never know, Lisa encouraged, stepping forward. Come on, I'll go with you. Mia took a deep breath and slowly crossed the threshold of the shelter, with Mark and Lisa by her side. As soon as they entered, a warm staff member approached. Welcome, I'm so glad you came. My name is Carla, and I'm the coordinator here. How can I help you? Mark introduced Mia, and Carla smiled warmly. Hi, Mia. You're very welcome here. We have lots of fun activities and amazing kids. Are you ready to meet some of them? Mia looked at Mark, who gave her an encouraging nod. Maybe, she replied timidly, but the curious sparkle in her eyes didn't go unnoticed. As Carla took her on a tour, Mia saw other kids playing soccer and drawing. But then, as they passed a window, she caught sight of a scene that made her stop. An adoptive family was interacting with a child, gently stroking their hair and laughing together. The image touched her deeply, bringing forth a mix of hope and fear. Look! Mia tugged at Carla's shirt, pointing at the scene. They look so happy. Carla noticed the change in the girl's expression and knelt beside her. They really do. That's what we want here, Mia. A place where kids can be happy, where they can feel at home. Mia felt a lump in her throat. What if I never have that? A family, a place I can call home? The question echoed in the silence of the shelter, and Mark, who was watching the scene, felt his heart ache. He remembered his own loss and the pain he carried for years. You can have that, Mia. We're here to help you find a home. Don't give up on your dreams, he said, his voice firm and full of emotion. Mia looked at him, searching for sincerity in his eyes. She was still battling memories of betrayal and distrust, but something within her began to shift. Hope, still small and fragile, started to bloom. After the visit to the shelter, Mark and Lisa sat at the kitchen table, their expressions reflecting the mix of emotions the experience had stirred. The smell of fresh coffee filled the air, but both were more focused on the conversations still echoing in their minds. Did you see the way she looked at that family? Lisa began, her voice soft but laden with concern. Mia was so scared, yet so full of hope. I can't stop thinking about what that must have meant for her. Mark nodded, his gaze distant. Yeah, I saw. She's so torn. That spark in her eyes, but the hesitance. It's like she wants to believe she can have a family, but fear holds her back from taking the next step. Lisa leaned forward, intertwining her fingers. What if we could be that family for her? If she accepted, we could welcome her into our home, give her a safe place. Mark took a deep breath, contemplating the idea. Do you really think that would work? Mia has been through so much. What if she doesn't feel comfortable? What if she doesn't want to stay with us? We need to give her the chance to choose, Lisa replied, her determination growing. We have to show her that we're here for her, that we won't abandon her like others have. We must be clear that we genuinely want to help. Mark looked into Lisa's eyes, realizing how willing she was to fight for Mia. All right, he finally said, his voice steady. Let's try, but we need to be patient. This child has suffered too much and can't just trust us overnight. I agree, Lisa said, a gentle smile beginning to form on her face. We can start talking to her, Involve her in our daily lives, maybe even invite her to some activities. What do you think about taking her to the park next Sunday? That's a good idea, Mark replied, already envisioning the scene. We could have a picnic. Does she like food? Maybe that'll help break the ice. Absolutely, Lisa exclaimed, excited. We can make sandwiches, bring fruits, and maybe even some fun drinks. What else do you think she'd like? Mark smiled, feeling hope swell inside him. Maybe a ball to play with, something to make her feel like a kid again. Great, Lisa said, already grabbing a notepad to jot everything down. And we need to make sure she knows we're here for her, that there's no rush. We don't want her to feel like she has to decide everything at once. Exactly, Mark agreed, his heart warming at the idea of building a new relationship with Mia. We need to make it clear that the door is always open, that she can come to us whenever she's ready. That night, as they prepared for bed, Mark couldn't shake thoughts of Mia from his mind. He remembered her hesitant gaze, yet filled with a desire for belonging. What if she doesn't believe she can be part of our family? He murmured, almost to himself. Lisa, hearing her husband, turned to him. Mark, she needs time. We can't force anything. Trust takes time, and we need to respect that. But what we can do is show her that we care, that we truly want to help. Yes, he replied, his voice a bit firmer. I'll do my best to make her feel safe. I want her to know that I'm not just a cop to her, but someone who genuinely cares about what she's been through. The silence filled the room, but it was a silence brimming with promises and renewed hopes. That night both fell asleep with the determination that, no matter what happened, they were ready to fight for Mia and give her the chance for a better life. The next day, Mark prepared to meet Mia again. He felt a mix of anxiety and hope. When he arrived at the alley, his heart raced as he spotted the small figure wrapped in her blanket. He approached slowly, offering a warm smile, and said, Hi, Mia. Do you have a moment to talk? The girl looked at him, hesitant, but something in her gaze seemed different. What do you want? She asked, distrust still lingering but with a hint of curiosity. I wanted to talk about what we saw at the shelter, Mark began, trying to convey sincerity, and about the possibility of you staying with us if you want. We want to help you find a safe place to live. Mia's eyes widened and she hesitated. But what if you don't want me anymore? What if I'm not good enough for you? Mark knelt to be at her level, speaking gently. Mia, you don't need to worry about that. We want you to know that we're here to help you no matter what happens. You're not alone. Silence settled between them as Mia seemed to think. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, I don't know. It's hard to trust people. I understand, Mark replied, his heart aching at the pain in her eyes. But we want you to know that we will always be here, ready to listen and help you. If you decide you want to try, we'll be ready to welcome you. Mia looked down, her expression conflicted, but inside her, a seed of hope began to sprout. She finally looked at Mark and, in a voice barely audible, said, Maybe I want to try. Mark watched Mia as she drew at the kitchen table. The morning sun filtered through the windows, creating a warm atmosphere that had previously seemed distant. The house, once marked by pain and solitude, now pulsed with the energy of the girl. She was absorbed in her work, focused on every stroke she made on the paper. Lisa, beside her, was organizing some kitchen utensils, but couldn't help stealing glances at what the child was creating. Look at that, Mia. It's beautiful, Lisa exclaimed, a genuine smile on her lips. Mia looked up, a shy sparkle appearing on her face. Thank you, Mrs. Lisa. I'm just drawing. Drawing? This looks more like a masterpiece. Mark approached, admiring her work. You have an incredible talent. What do you plan to do with it? Mia hesitated, biting her lower lip as she gazed at her drawing, a colorful portrait of a radiant sun surrounded by flowers. I don't know. I just like to draw. It makes me feel different. Mark felt a pang in his heart. He remembered how Emily used to draw, creating magical worlds on her sheets of paper. You know, your art can make people happy. You could show it to the world one day. The girl looked at him, surprised. Do you really think so? Absolutely, Mark replied, leaning in closer. If you want, we could have an art exhibition at school or even in a cafe. People love to see what young artists have to share. Mia's eyes sparkled at the idea, but insecurity still lingered. But what if no one likes it? Lisa knelt beside Mia, holding her hand. Sweetheart, the most important thing is that you express yourself. It doesn't matter what others think. What matters is how you feel doing it. Mark nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. What if we started doing some family activities? We could go to a park, bring your art supplies, and create together. What do you think? Mia looked at both of them, a mix of hope and doubt in her eyes. Really? You would do that with me? Of course. It would be fun, Mark replied, feeling a wave of joy as he saw the girl start to smile. Yes, I would love that, Mia exclaimed, her excitement finally overcoming her insecurities. Can I draw the flowers in the park? And we can have a competition to see who makes the best drawing, Lisa added, winking at Mia. The loser has to make dinner. That's not fair, Mark laughed, hands on his hips. How can I lose to such a talented artist? Laughter echoed through the house, filling the space with a new sense of family. Mia, now more confident, began to draw again, her strokes firmer. Meanwhile, Mark watched the girl, feeling an ever-growing connection. He realized that by helping Mia face her fears, he was also confronting his own. He remembered how lost he had felt. But now, alongside Lisa and Mia, there was purpose, a renewed desire to create a better future. I think we'll do this starting tomorrow, Mark declared, looking at Lisa. A day in the park, art, and fun. Perfect, Lisa agreed, smiling. And we'll bring a picnic because art and food always go together. Mia laughed, a carefree, vibrant laugh warming Mark's heart. He knew the journey of healing wouldn't be easy. But in that moment, surrounded by Lisa's love and Mia's determination, he felt they were all together forming something beautiful. Life was beginning to blossom again, and the pain of the past, while still present, didn't feel so heavy anymore. Mark was at his desk, the city lights of Detroit twinkling in the background when his phone rang. The sound cut through the tranquility of his home, a place now alive with Mia's spirit but still shadowed by the loss of Emily. He hesitated, looking at the screen. It was Detective Harris, an old acquaintance from the department. Mark's heart raced. He knew this call could bring news he wasn't prepared to face. Mark, we need to talk about your daughter's case, Harris said, his voice grave and professional on the other end. Mark felt a chill in his stomach. The investigation has been reopened, he thought. He took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Okay, you can come over, he replied, attempting to mask the anxiety in his voice. When Harris arrived, the atmosphere in the house changed. He sat in the living room where Mia was coloring at a table, surrounded by sheets of paper and colored pencils. Her innocence was a stark contrast to the weight of the conversation about to take place. Mark gestured for Mia to move a little further away, knowing the discussion wouldn't be appropriate for her ears. What happened? Mark asked, already anticipating the answer. We received new information about the accident. Someone came forward and said they had seen what happened that night, Harris began, looking at Mark. And according to what he told us, there might be a connection to a trafficking group in the area. Mark's mind felt foggy. He remembered the nights he spent wondering if he could have done something differently, if he could have protected Emily. Now this new possibility of justice felt like a blow to his heart. And what does that mean? He asked, his voice trembling. It means we might have a chance to find out who was responsible. But Mark, this could bring up painful memories. Are you prepared for that? Mark looked at Mia, who was now happily drawing, oblivious to what was happening. That child had become his light, and he knew he needed to face the pain of the past, not just for himself, but also for her. He nodded, determined. I need to know the truth. That night, as he prepared for bed, Mark felt a growing pressure in his chest. The memory of the pain he carried mixed with the hope Mia had brought into his life. When Lisa entered the room, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, lost in thought. What's wrong? You look so deep in thought, Lisa commented, concerned. Mark looked at her, his eyes welling up with tears. The investigation has been reopened. They might have new leads about Emily's accident. Lisa moved closer, sitting beside him. Isn't that good? You might finally get some answers. Yes, but I feel like this could hurt Mia. She's been so happy here. I don't want any of this to affect her, he said, his voice trembling. Lisa held his hand, giving him strength. We will be together, Mark. We'll protect her. The next morning, the energy in the house was different. Mark was determined to talk to Mia about the new situation, but he also knew he had to be cautious. During breakfast, he watched her with a tender smile as she enjoyed her toast. Mia, can we talk for a bit? Mark asked, drawing her attention. She stopped chewing, her expression shifting to a mix of curiosity and apprehension. About what, sir? She asked a bit hesitantly. About my daughter, Emily, and something that happened. Mia looked at him, and Mark's heart ached at the fragility in her eyes. I don't want you to be sad, she said, looking down. Mark leaned forward, his voice gentle. No, it's not that. I want you to know we are here for you. You have become part of my family, and I will always be here to support you. Mia lifted her head, her eyes shining with newfound confidence. I want to be part of your family, she replied, with a determination that filled Mark's heart with hope. The conversation flowed, and over time, Mia began to share her dreams, her insecurities, and finally, the idea of accepting Mark and Lisa as her new parents. I'm scared. What if one day you don't want me anymore? Mia said, her eyes filling with tears. Mark moved closer, wrapping her in a tight embrace. Never, Mia. You are our light now, and we will always be here for you, no matter what happens. The bond between them grew stronger, and over the following days, Mark, Lisa, and Mia's relationship transformed into a tapestry of love and support. Mark remembered the pain of losing Emily, but now, looking at Mia, he saw a new reason to move forward. One sunny afternoon, as they were at the park, Mark and Lisa brought Mia to meet other children. She hesitated but soon let go, interacting, laughing, and playing. Look, Mia, you're having fun, Lisa exclaimed, watching with joy. I am, Mia replied, her face beaming. Mark smiled, feeling a wave of emotion wash over him. He realized that despite the tears that might still come, hope was being reborn in their lives. And when Mia turned around and smiled at them, he knew they had found something precious, a new chance to be a family. In an emotional climax as the sun set, Mark, Lisa, and Mia embraced. Each of them felt the strength of the moment, a symbol of the new life they were building together. The pain of the past still existed, but alongside Mia, Mark found a new purpose. And so, amidst tears and laughter, they welcomed a future that, though uncertain, was filled with love and hope. We've come to the end of this touching story. If you enjoyed it and want to see more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Right now, there's a playlist of videos on your screen. If you want to keep watching these heartfelt tales, just click on it, and you'll start watching right away. And now tell us in the comments which city you're watching from, and leave a like to support our work. Now, a sincere question. Do you agree with what happened in the story? We want to hear your opinion. Until the next video.